Welcome back to the OSM channel. In today's video I'm going to be installing ATV tires on my lawnmower. I'm going to divide this video into two halves. First we're going to talk a little bit about why I'm swapping out the tires to ATV tires, and then we're going to go over how I swap out the tires. Now I've learned a few things over the years to make this job a little bit easier, so feel free to stick around, you might learn a thing or two. Anyway, currently on my lawnmower I have turf tires, and those turf tires are probably original to the tractor. So about 5 years ago the sidewall started to crack. They were losing air pressure. They had decent tread, so I decided to put tubes in there probably like 5 years ago, something like that. One of the tubes has started to leak. I don't know what happened. Maybe it shifted, it sheared the valve stem a little bit. So it's really just time to swap out the tires. But additionally, I'm not sure if those turf tires really help to save the lawn. What I find is that when I'm on a little bit of a hillside and the ground's wet, what will often happen if I have that mower in a high gear and I release the clutch, those turf tires tend to spin and they actually seem to tear up the lawn. Now I feel that these nubby ATV tires are going to do a much better job at gaining traction in wet and difficult conditions. But additionally, I use that lawn tractor not only for cutting the lawn. Those of you that are familiar with the channel will know that I use that lawn tractor for hauling around my little homemade logging trailer. And I use that lawn tractor in the wintertime to move wood from the wood stack over by the house. So I mean, that thing will be running out in 4 or 5 inches of snow. And with those turf tires, I always have to have chains on. But with these nubby ATV tires, I may not have to use the chains anymore, so we will just have to see. But I'm really curious myself to see how well these tires work over the turf tires. So stay tuned to the end of the video and I'll kind of share my final thoughts. But anyway, let's start swapping out these tires. The first thing we need to do is to jack up the rear of the tractor and take off the wheels and tires. Alright, now let's start taking this tire off. So the first thing we need to do is to remove this dust cap. Next we need to remove this C-clip. You can do this with a flathead screwdriver. And there should be a washer. And now we should be able to slide the wheel right off the axle. If you take a look inside the wheel there, you can see the key and the keyway. So it's not hurting anything right now, so I'm just going to leave it in there and keep an eye out for it in case it falls out while we're changing out the tire. Next, let's remove the valve core. In order to remove the valve core, you're going to need a valve core removal tool. So we'll unthread this cap, take our core removal tool, insert it into the stem, and rotate counterclockwise. There's air pressure in the tire, it will bleed out. Alright, so breaking the bead. Let's give this method a try. So I have a floor jack. Underneath the floor jack is a piece of 2x4 which is putting upward pressure on the rim. And I have the trailer hitch positioned underneath the edge of the tire. So now I'm going to jack up the jack and we'll see if this bead breaks loose. There she goes. Tore up some of the reflective on my trailer hitch, but no big deal. Nice. Now we'll do the other side. There we go. I tell you, that works like an absolute charm. So now we need to remove this tire off the rim, and I'm just going to work it off with some tire spoon. So you're going to want to apply some type of lubricant to the tire. I usually use some WD-40, had pretty good success with this stuff. So we'll just spray it down along the bead. We're going to take the hook end of our spoon and we're going to hook it on one side of the tire. Alright, so I got that hooked on the inner part of the bead. Now take your foot and push down on the other side of the tire. What we're trying to do is we're trying to get that bead down into the lower part of the rim. In the lower part of the rim, the diameter decreases, and what that allows the tire to do is to shift over, and that allows us to take this tire off a bit easier. You can also position your second bar in there so you're ready to go. Step on the other side of the tire. keep working the tire off. Almost ready to go. There we go, that's one side. While we're at it, I'm gonna try and pull this tube out of here now. Otherwise, I think it's gonna be in the way. Really curious what failed on this tube too. So now that I have the rim sticking up a little bit, I'm gonna take a small pair of vice grips. I'm gonna clamp this down on the edge of the rim. Now I'm just gonna work this off the rest of the way with my spoons. She is. Next, I'm going to install a new valve stem. So I have the new valve stem and the new valve stem installation tool. So we're going to pop this valve stem up through the opening in the rim. I'm going to take this tool, thread it onto the stem. Then I'm going to leverage this tool on the edge of the rim and pull up. That is seated. That's how you install a new valve stem on a rim. Pretty simple. I also want to note that these tires are directional tires. The way I have the tire positioned right now is how it should look when it's installed. So it's really important that when we install this tire on the rim, we install it the correct way. So valve stem's going to face up. We're just going to install it like that. All right, now I'm going to lubricate the inside and outside bead of the tire with WD. Then we're going to take the tire, try and get it on one side of the rim. If you get lucky, it should pop right in. With some persuasion, of course. Well, with my little pipsqueak arms, I'm not strong enough to pop this bead over the rim. So I have one side of the rim clamped off with a vice grip, and we're going to swap back over to the spoons and just work this tire on. There we go. This tire is giving me a little bit of trouble, no big deal. Just put a second vice grip on here. Work it on a little bit and then inch up that vice grip. Knee on one side of the tire. Move my vice grip forward. See the progress we've made. Get another purchase. There she is. I really like the two vice grip methods, so you know, every time you break the bar over and you get the tire seated a little bit further on the rim, just inch up that vice grip and eventually you'll get all the way around the tire. Alright, so now we need to air up the tire, and what needs to happen, the bead of the tire needs to pop up and seat on the rim. It's going to make a very loud pop sound. Typically I like to stand off to the side and wear some hearing protection in case things go south. Now what may happen is you may find that the tire is slightly deformed and too much air is escaping between the rim and the tire. For that, you have a few options. One, you could use a ratchet strap, ratchet around the center of the tire, and generally that helps to squish the tire onto the rim. So then you start airing it up a little bit, take that ratchet strap off, and then air it up the rest of the way. Aside from that, you could also use a bead blaster, which is a big air tank with a quarter turn nozzle, and you position that kind of in between the rim and the tire. It'll give it a quick burst of air and usually seat the bead of the tire. Aside from that, you could also use tire mounting compound, which is like a thick waxy substance that you smear in between the rim and the edge of the tire. Those are all the safest ways to seat the bead. Do not use ether and an ignition source, because with that you risk the tire exploding and you don't want to do that. So we'll see if we get lucky here, see if the tire seats on the rim. Another tip I have is remove the valve core if you're having trouble getting the tire to sit on the rim. The valve core typically restricts the volume of air that can pass through the valve stem. So by removing the valve core, you allow a higher volume of air to enter the wheel. And of course, you're only going to do this for seating purposes. After the bead is properly seated, then we need to reinstall the valve core. And that actually worked. So I'm going to position this back on the ground, stand off to the side. So in this case, I didn't hear a loud pop sound, but looking at both sides of the wheel, I see that the rim is right up against the bead. So I am confident that this worked. And now we're just simply going to reinstall the valve core. Reading the sidewall, this tire can be inflated up to 7 psi. So I'm going to put 7 psi of air in the tire now. Now during the tire installation process, the keyway fell out of the rim, so I'm going to reinstall it onto the axle. Additionally, this axle is looking a little bit dry, so I'm just going to re-lubricate it with some axle grease. Now I'm going to reinstall the wheel back onto the axle, ensuring that the keyway on the wheel lines up with the keyway on the axle. Then on the end of the axle, we need to reinstall this washer. Then the seat clip. Then finally the dust cap. Man, what a difference. I'm going to repeat the process on the other side and check back in with you when I finish. Alright, first thing I want to address is, does swapping from turf tires to ATV tires affect the ride? And I would say absolutely not. It was pretty darn smooth, just as smooth as having turf tires on there, so even going on the pavement, really no difference in terms of ride quality. Now in terms of traction, big difference. Does it tear up the lawn when you're just doing regular circles and turning? I would say no. It doesn't really look any different from turning with turf tires. You can see where I turned here. Didn't tear up the turf. So I don't think these are going to tear up the turf under normal conditions. However, I did a test right here where, let me try and find the spot. So I popped the clutch right here in 5th or 6th gear, and you can see it did do some damage to the turf, but that just means we have tremendous traction with these tires. So if you're driving your lawnmower like a normal person, you know, trying to be gentle on the turns, it's not going to tear up the lawn, in my opinion. However, if you're being stupid and you tend to pop the clutch, or you're really hard on the controls, looks like it will tear up the turf like this. This probably will repair itself just fine, but I would say you just got to be smart about it, because we've greatly improved the traction of this lawnmower. So I'm going to conclude today's video. Thanks for watching. As always, I will catch you on the next one.